We turn now to Trump's various legal troubles. His lawyers promoting the litigation to overturn the election is under fire. The, quote, Kraken team, what kind of name is that? Facing sanctions hearings in Michigan for making false claims in court filings. A judge ruling that they must appear in court. And even though Giuliani is not part of that hearing, he has other sanctions coming his way. He's facing disciplinary proceedings that could result in stripping him of his law license. And he's currently suspended from practicing law in D.C. and New York until that pans out. But he's still talking, repeating the lies that got him suspended in the first place in an interview with criminal Stephen Bannon.
There are 20 to 25 witnesses who would testify under oath that over 700,000 ballots were counted, which they had no opportunity to observe. And that is against the law.
And he's not the only one still talking. Trump appearing with Bill O'Reilly last night saying he will sit for a deposition in his social media lawsuit and repeating false claims about election fraud. A reminder, there was no fraud.
I want to take a deposition from you. You're going to sit for a deposition?
Sure. I mean, I look forward to it, actually. I love talking about the election fraud.
Joining me now is former federal prosecutor Joyce Vance. Joyce, I'm going to start with this. On the scale of 1 to 1,000, on the likelihood that I will one day win an NBA championship, on the chances that I will be a millionaire lottery winner tomorrow, what are the actual chances of Donald Trump sitting for a deposition in this ridiculous lawsuit that he has against social media companies?
If 1 is the lowest, then I'm going with 1, Jason.
And the reason is because, and this would be my thought as a non-lawyer. 1, Donald Trump doesn't want to go through with this lawsuit to begin with. It would lead to discovery. It would lead to all sorts of investigations. It might reveal emails of intimidation attempts between him and members of his administration during the election, during the campaign. So again, from a legal standpoint, what could he be doing by claiming that he actually wants to sit for a deposition? How is that helping him? How is that helping any of his lawyers?
This looked like a fundraising stunt from the minute he filed the lawsuit, and that was followed up as both he and the Republican Party sent out fundraising emails almost as soon as the lawsuit hit. It's not a meritorious lawsuit. It would be surprising to see it go as far as discovery because of the fallacy of this legal claim that the social media platforms are government entities. It just really boggles the mind to see this sort of lawsuit filed. It clearly doesn't have a legitimate lawful purpose. And so that leaves us with fundraising. So,
Joyce, I want to play you some audio. This is Trump at a recent rally, sort of praising and jumping up and down for the people who tried to overthrow this government. I want to ask you a question about the legal consequences of this on the other side.
People are being treated unbelievably unfairly. When you look at people in prison and nothing happens to Antifa, the person that shot Ashley Babbitt, boom, right through the head, just boom. There was no reason for that.
So, Joyce, at a local level, you have Black Lives Matter activists being arrested, thrown in jail, brought up on charges for supposedly being a part of or activating riots or supporting riots or engaging in behavior that's disruptive to the public. Why is the President of the United States, former President of the United States, not being sued, not also being brought up on charges for basically advocating for and inspiring a riot that led to not only an attempted overthrow of the government, but also people dying? Isn't he legally liable for that?
I think the first thing that we have to say, Jason, is that this is just despicable conduct from the former president, because what he's doing by trying to lionize Ashley Babbitt, and her death is tragic. Her death occurred after he set those incidents on January 6th in motion. But nonetheless, this is how many of these groups that are white supremacist in nature, groups that targeted our government on January 6th, this is how they go back into their communities and recruit new followers. So it's absolutely horrific conduct. And ultimately, the question here is whether what the former president did is protected by the First Amendment. It's possible that he may be immunized from criminal liability in that way. and whether it is possible to mount a successful civil challenge may ultimately turn on something sort of interesting, Jason, something that we saw raised in the context of the E. Jean Carroll defamation suit against Trump. That's whether or not he was acting in his official capacity as president of the United States the morning of January 6th and when he set these events in motion. Because if so, the government will take the position that it may come in and substitute itself for him in any litigation and prevent him from being civilly sued.
So right now, I want to make sure we get quickly to the current status of the investigations in the Trump organization. So we have Weisselberg, who's given some information. There's questions as to whether or not Ivanka will flip one way or another. I've asked this question because I think it's important, right? These investigations, they're complicated. They're not super easy. It's barely an inconvenience. This is work that's being done here. My question is, as we're seeing elections and changes in leadership in the state of New York, does that have any change? Is there a concern, for example, that some of the people who are heading this investigation now may not be able to see it through till the end? Is that going to change the likelihood of Trump or any of his organization being accountable? Or is this something that we can trust can be handed off 2 or 3 years down the road, even as this case continues?
Prosecutors are professionals, and good professionals always engage in succession planning. Knowing that Cy Vance would be leaving the district attorney's office in Manhattan at the end of the year, one suspects that there's a good bit of succession planning involved, but the reality is the prosecutors who are charged with the day in and day out operation in these cases are folks who stick around when administrations change, and they are the folks who are primarily responsible. I have confidence that this case, will follow the facts and follow the law and go to its logical conclusion on the basis of those two elements.